literally change the way they move and through that change their life.
At it for 10 years now, you still have that same energy when someone walks in the door.
So I reached out to Matt at Rise Physio when I felt completely consumed by the overthoughts and fear.
But it's also building that belief again, to trust the body part, to trust the area. Brain is consistently getting this input that the area is damaged, that you're in pain, that you have problems, then that will become the reality.
Maybe the hardest thing you had to accept when it comes to running a people-focused business that is based on a lot of pain. And
I think the very fundamental and the basis of it all is...
Hi, and welcome back to Setting the Pace. It's been a minute, it's been busy, but I'm so happy to be sitting back in this chair. And like with every episode, my aim is to deconstruct ideas and mindsets from different disciplines, be it business, sports, and everything in between. My aim for this podcast, which I hope will always be the aim, is to learn more about the habits, routines, and frameworks from the guests that sit opposite me. And I am honestly so fortunate that I keep on meeting people that continue to inspire me and just make me excited to continue to go down this road with you all hopefully listening. If you are listening and you enjoy this content, any likes, comments, follows, anything really helps. I know it's annoying and everyone's always saying the same thing, but it genuinely does make a massive difference. So I really appreciate if you could take a minute to do that. Today's episode. Today we have someone very exciting sitting opposite me. This is Matthew Camilleri. So Matthew is a physiotherapist and business owner that has opened 2 very successful physiotherapy clinics with a third one on the way. Although this third one, there's a bit of a difference to it, which I'm sure we'll discuss later on in this podcast. Matt is someone that is very interested in the link between the body and the brain. He's got a master's in clinical management of pain, which is something that we'll be talking about again today. So Matt and I were introduced in a pretty unique scenario. Last month, we were both on this epic adventure in crazy seas as an even crazier guy swam almost twice around the island of Malta. And Matthew was there as both Nila Juice's physiotherapist, but also as one of the tender drivers, which was an integral part of the team, just like everybody else who was there. And we spent quite a few hours just chatting, and there was just a moment where I was like, okay, I need to get this guy on the podcast. And it was a mix of being on this epic adventure and seeing Nila Juice push boundaries and his body like never before, and also just meeting someone that helped him get there. So Matt is Neil's physio, and he's really helped him to condition and strengthen his body. And it was just like one of those moments where I was like, okay, I looked up and I was like, perfect, I have my next guest. So in this wide-ranging conversation, Matt and I are going to discuss the brain and body connection, how you can literally change the way your brain is wired and how this applies to physiotherapy and the way you approach pain. And also how pain is nothing new, and how he's built a business that really believes that you must always leave people better than you found them. So let's jump right in. Hi, I'm Maria, and welcome to Setting the Pace. This podcast was born out of the curiosity to understand the mindset behind the outcomes we spend years chasing, be it in sports, business, relationships, and everything in between. I want to learn more about the person you become and achieving anything that's worth your time, and how you can set the pace to get exactly there. Hey Matt, welcome to Setting the Pace.
Hi Maria, thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm so excited to be here, and I really feel honored that I have this opportunity to share my views and talk a little bit about what really makes my brain feel alive and what really drives me and gives me passion and makes me get out of bed every morning. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
That's amazing. So, okay, let's jump right in. So last night I called you and I told you, Matt, what was your peak and pit of the week? Now, for anyone that knows me, this is a question I love to ask because it really gives you an insight into the person. And I'm really interested in what your peak was that you mentioned last night. So what was your peak of the week?
So first of all, I just think it's such a great question to ask people. You get to know so much about them, and it's really nice to reflect a little bit in this like life we live that's so fast. It's great to stop at the end of the day and think a little bit about what's going on. But my peak, well, this is literally the first thing that came to mind when you asked me yesterday, was I just felt so engaged with a client who came in yesterday, and I just felt immediately after about 15-30 minutes of speaking to this person how much we could help her. So how she's this perfect client for Rise. And when I define my perfect client, it's just someone whose life we can change, who can have this incredible positive effect. And the reality is that physiotherapy can help a vast range of people. But every so often you get someone walking in through the door and you just know that you can literally change the way they move and through that change their life. And I just find that so inspiring.
So even after all these years, so you've been at it for 10 years now, you still have that same energy when someone walks in the door?
I hate to admit it, but it has been 10 years. My thoughts and perceptions around physiotherapy have changed greatly, and I think that's the beauty of being in healthcare. So your views, the way of the world, the research changes on an almost monthly basis. But yes, I'm still super engaged with it, and I think that nowadays we can help people more than ever. So there's just so much that physiotherapy can do and that movement can do to change someone's life. So yes, 100%. One of the things I love to say is that when someone walks through the door, I almost see them like this complex, almost like a gift all wrapped up, and it's my job, or it's the physiotherapist's job, or any healthcare professional's job, to start unwrapping those layers and understanding what's going on, and within that initial session having a view or a way or a plan to be able to help that person in the best way possible.
And is this something that you've always had that mindset when someone walks in, or is it something that you've slowly over the years kind of, it works, so let's do it again and again?
I mean, it's a mix of both. I'll be very honest. A lot of my thoughts nowadays have come from research, but very much so from mentors. And I think the concept of mentorship is just so important. I think there is so many smart people, and the only reason we progress is because the old cliche that we're standing on the shoulders of giants, you know. And I feel very lucky to have met some people who have really guided me and really helped me learn and progress. And that actually came from one of my mentors. He actually said people are like onions. He was from the Middle East, this guy. He loved his onions, and he said every person that walks in through the door is like this complex onion, and I get to peel back the layers and start coming up with a plan of what I can do to really get to their core and really change things.
Yeah, I really love that you said that, because I feel like the older we get, it's like at times you feel more alone, or you're just in a problem, and just having maybe that mentor. And it sometimes doesn't even need to be a direct mentor. Sometimes I get some of my mentors, they don't even know me, because it would just be from a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever. So I think it's really important that you continue to seek out that reference point that kind of helps you stay aligned. So, and this is something that we're going to get into, because we have loads of things I want to talk about. But I actually want to pull out something that you said earlier, which is that you always like to leave a place better than you found it, and also a person better than you found them. Why is this important to you, to a point that anybody that comes into Rise, as whether they're an employee or if they're any part of the team, this is something that you drill until it's kind of almost tattooed probably on their arms and they don't even know it?
No, totally. I think creating positive change is one of the big reasons that people do get into healthcare, and it's definitely one of the reasons that I've seen as well. I mean, I have a background and a family who are all in medicine as well, so I've seen that love of helping people from the beginning, and I know how rewarding that can be. Another little kind of mentorship story is that in my years playing rugby, as we used to travel from hotel to hotel and place to place to play, it was always one of the big kind of values of the team that you're always going to leave your hotel room in a better place than you find it. And I love that concept. I love the fact that someone you've never met before is going to have a better day because of one of your actions. And I've really tried to bring that across into physiotherapy and healthcare as well. And that starts from the very beginning, from the second that the person walks in through the door, the way you greet them, the way the place looks, the way the place smells. It's these little things that leave this lasting impression. And that when a person has left, they go, I can trust this person, I can trust this place, I know they're going to help me. And that promotes a concept of adherence, that people will stick to the plan you give them and give them long-term results. And yes, definitely one of the big things we drill in at Rise, and I just find to be one of our basic and most important values.
Nice. So anyone listening to this, what is the context that they need? Like a math handbook, very quickly, like the Cliff Notes, that can help anyone listening to this understand kind of what your baseline is and where you're coming from. So I know you mentioned sports. So sports has always been a really big part of your life. This podcast initially did start off with just sports, but since then we've had business people on, we've had hopefully more of a mix of people. But somehow sports always tends to be part of people's lives. So what part did it play in your life?
So I always see my background's in rugby. So I played rugby for the national team for a number of years. I just stopped this year. I played for my club, Stompers, for a really prolonged period of time, practically 20 years. So for a long time, it was my entire identity. And I went through school, went through my education with sports always being an integral part and having to find a way to balance out my education, my studies, my life, my relationships around sport.
So it always came natural to you to be in sports?
I can't ever remember a day when I wasn't physically active. I think I was lucky that my parents pushed me to be in sport from early on. They were never aggressively on me to achieve excessively in sport, but there was always the opportunity. They always gave me that lift to training, picked me up at the end of the day, no matter what the day was like or their day was like. So it very much comes from there as well. But one thing I truly believe is that sport and physical activity is the school of life. I think you learn a lot more from sport than you can from any other entity, school, opportunity. It pushes time management, it pushes leadership, it pushes the ability to work in a team. So it's one of the other big reasons that I'm now a physiotherapist, the fact that I was both injured myself, saw people get injured, but also I saw the value of being involved in sport and staying physically active, both for the body and the mind.
And I think something that you really valued as well was the connection that like you create within a team, but also the small efforts that lead to long-term change. And I think this was something that you got from sports and you continue to carry out within your physio career. So you're quite a happy kid, you're playing sports a lot, you are always around hopefully a nice group of friends and whatever. And you kind of are always on this, small changes lead to really nice big outcomes. And this is what kind of happily leads you into physio. But you weren't always going to go into physio, right?
No, I wasn't. I can't say that I ever woke up one morning and said I want to be a physiotherapist. I was always kind of surrounded by the medical professions. And like I said before, I saw how valuable they can be to society and how much change you can create. But it was really a bit of a happy accident to end up in physiotherapy. As most people do, they associate sport with physio. Nowadays, I know how broad and vast a profession it is, that for every part of medicine, there's a physiotherapist who's there assisting as well. But I was very lucky to kind of drop into it almost by chance. So, yeah, the journey into physio definitely wasn't one I greatly planned. And to be very honest, even the journey into kind of creating Rise and creating an entity and company wasn't something I planned. It very much came from a passion of seeing and helping people and wanting to bring that method to more and more people through more professionals, through more people working with the entity.
Yeah. And I think something that really drove you to this is that you really wanted to understand the way people were perceiving injuries and pain to sports and also their bigger life. And before this conversation, you told me to look up the definition of pain by IASP.
Yeah.
And if I had to read it out very quickly, this is what the definition of pain is. An unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with or resembling that associated with actual or potential tissue damage. Pain is always a personal experience that is influenced to varying degrees by biological, psychological, and social factors. Through their life experiences, individuals learn the concept of pain. A person's report of pain is a person's report of an experience as pain should be respected. And at this moment, I was like, okay, I know what pain is. Like, I can't remember a day where I didn't know what pain was. Not that I've always been in chronic pain or anything, but you hear it, people, I'm in pain, I have a headache, I'm in pain. But I had never actually looked up the definition. And for me, what really stood out was resembling associated or potential pain based on experience. So it might not actually be pain. It might be what your brain is associating with pain, as you explained to me. And at that moment, I was like, whoa, I don't know what to believe anymore. So can you explain to me your big belief that pain is a lot to do with perception and how when you feel pain, it's not actual pain at some times, if that makes sense.
So this is one of the most complex chats I have with clients, with people. It's one of the things I'm quite passionate on speaking about. What I will say is my understanding definitely didn't look like this from day one, and it's a very complex topic that changes from day to day. So there's a lot to think about when it comes to pain and pain science. My journey into the world of pain obviously started with being an athlete and being in pain myself.
My journey in the world of pain.
But also kind of almost stumbling upon the masters I did just opened this whole new floodgate of what's going on. I must say that a number of years ago, the physiotherapy profession, but the healthcare profession as well, was very kind of mechanistic. It's just about what's happening in the body and how that creates painful stimulus. But doing this master's myself and through all the research from some incredibly intelligent people around the world, we've started to learn a little bit more about pain and pain science. And I'm pretty sure that if we watch this podcast again in 10 years' time, we'd be saying, what are we talking about? Because research has shifted and changed again. Mm-hmm. But the brain definitely plays an extreme role in pain and the way we perceive pain. And what I like to tell people, and I think one of the big metaphors that I really like to use, is that pain is a lot of an alarm system. Now, an alarm system doesn't only switch on because something's actually wrong, but because there's the threat of something potentially being wrong as well. So that's one of the big things that I always explain to people, and I really try to have them understand. Now, I want to start this whole chapter of this conversation saying that no, pain is not in your head. If someone walks in with pain, it doesn't mean they're imagining it, or it might not actually be there, but there's various roles at play. There's the input from the body part, there's the perception of the brain of that body part, but there's also a big part of how threatened are we feeling with this issue. So how problematic could this be to my future survival?
Okay. And so if we had to start from a second example. Okay, so someone walks in to Rise. They're smelling the diffuser that you've got going on. And
lemon scent.
We'll go into that later on. And they sit down and they tell you, listen, I've been in pain for 6 months. Let's take the back, for example. And I'm going crazy. I can't live like this. If I go shopping, it hurts. If I do this, it hurts. And so you're seeing this person in front of you. So obviously your brain starts to run. You're trying to already start to kind of play that investigative role. What is the first step you take? And can you explain how careful you are in what you're about to say next to the person who's sitting opposite you, who's in pain and is just desperately looking to relieve themselves, both mentally, physically, from this pain that is hindering them in any area of their life? It could be from the smallest to the biggest.
So one of the big steps we take with anyone who walks in, definitely at Rise, also at most practices, is that you'd want to sit down in front of the person and have a very clear, concise conversation. We do build, to some extent, almost in our minds, a template of what that conversation should look like to make sure that you haven't missed anything. But the first step is always the same. You always want to make sure that there's nothing that's been missed in this situation, nothing that's life-threatening or potentially long-term harmful to the person. Once you've cleared that out, in medicine they're called red flags, then you can start exploring, start investigating what's going on. So a big part of that is trying to understand the onset of the injury. So where did this problem come from? Why is it propagating itself? Why is it ongoing? That being said, back pain is very complex and there can be multiple reasons why that's happening. The big point I try to educate on, and the thing I speak about a lot, is that the way that person perceives the problem, what the person's been told about the problem, is going to heavily influence what they feel, the way they act. I'll give an example which is extremely common. Someone walks in after having bent forward, picked up their sock from the floor, and all of a sudden they're stuck in this big back spasm where they can't move. They may have been told, listen, you're never going to be able to bend forwards again. All of a sudden, that person in front of you is terrified of flexion, of bending forwards. And that's obviously going to create problems outside of the biological input that's going on in the back. Mm-hmm. So obviously, what is going on in the body, the problem in the actual body part itself, is something we need to address, something we need to look at and start to work towards altering and changing. But the way that person perceives the problem is massive as well.
So, okay, let's stop there. Can you tease out that part, how the person perceives the problem and the way you are going to guide them through it? Because this really was interesting to me when we spoke before this podcast.
Yep. So one of the big things here is that person afraid of certain movements? The term there, not especially important, it's called kinesiophobia. Kinesiophobia is this prolonged and ongoing fear of certain movements because of the fear of re-injury.
Wow.
We see it very often in something like a fracture. So after someone's broken their ankle or injured their knee, there's this long-standing fear of damaging the area again. Even though, and this is something we've spoken about in the past, that broken area is often stronger than any other body part. So
Why?
after you fracture the bone and there's been callus formation and the area has healed, that bone is actually stronger than any other bone in your body.
And it's really, this is where I feel a huge, I don't know how to put it, but it's like, I think growing up, or just my general knowledge, even when I see somebody, like, I remember when my mom broke her ankle and whatever, it's like everyone's very scared, but also the people around you are like edging you on to like, be careful, be careful, be careful. But you're saying that it's actually quite the opposite.
Definitely, and it's definitely one of our big jobs as physiotherapists. It's not just about loading that area up again, re-strengthening the muscles around the area, making sure that people have full range of motion and activity, but it's also building that belief again, to trust the body part, to trust the area. You have to keep in mind that if the brain is consistently getting this input that the area is damaged, that you're in pain, that you have problems, then that will become the reality. Just because the brain, and one of the big points we're going to speak about as well, is neuroplastic. It's not this static thing that never changes. It's a lot like the muscles in our body.
Yeah.
With the correct input and load, it can move in one direction, but with the wrong input and load, it can move towards the other. And again, I really need to emphasize this point. I'm not saying you can ignore what the physical, biological issue in that ankle is, in that back is, but the perceptions of the person around it, the societal input around the problem are so important as well. If we believe that we're never going to heal, we can't ever get better, then that will definitely become, or much more likely to become, the reality.
And it's really interesting that you take this stance, because I used to swim and I've always been in sports. So I think when you're in sports, you get used to that. Like at the beginning, I used to get frustrated. Like, why do I always hurt? Why do I always get injured? But the reality is that if you're moving, the chances of you hurting are higher, right?
Of course.
And I tend to be a bit clumsy, so that doesn't help. But I had never thought that when I go see a physio or any physical or any doctor or whatever, that what they say, I can really cling to it. And now when I think about it, after you go to a physiotherapist or any doctor and you go home, someone's like, what did they tell you? And I probably say the bad thing more than the positive. Like I'd say, yeah, they told me it's going to be hard for me to recover or whatever. And so then I start to believe it. And then you start to build stories around it. So to be here listening to how you are aware of how what you say can really become a new person's belief is really nice to hear, because you can literally change the way someone walks in and out of your
Totally.
thing.
And it's one of the big things I'm passionate about. One of the big thoughts that had hit me from my master's is this concept called iatrogenesis.
Okay.
Another big term. I love to unpack them because one of the most important things to me
Please
is that
spell
it. One of the big things for me is that someone leaves my clinic understanding what the issue is, what the long-term plan is. So iatrogenesis basically describes that either willingly or unwillingly, a healthcare professional, whilst trying to help someone, can create more damage. And the area I really think about this on is the way we speak to people. If you speak to people in a way which is negative, promoting a negative self-belief, then you are in fact creating more harm than good. So nowadays, I have more going on through my brain during a session of the way I'm speaking, the way I'm acting, the body language I'm using, almost than what I'm physically doing to that person or with that person or the exercise prescription that I'm using. And that's one of the big things that's in my mind as well. Another point which I'd really like to unpack that you spoke is making sure that the person in front of you really understands and perceives what you're telling them in the correct way. And one of my mentors also taught me this. One of the great ways to do this is to, at the end of your explanation or at the end of your session, ask the person, so what do you think about what I just told you? If you're saying this to your best friend when you leave the session, what are you going to tell them? And it's incredible how often you've said one thing and that person has heard a completely different thing. And that just gives you that 5-minute opportunity to realign those beliefs that the person's spoken about.
Wow. So that's like really interesting because I had never thought about it like that. And in fact, before this podcast, I reached out to one of your clients and I asked them, how has kind of Matt helped you with your belief system and when it comes to the pain and the injury that you suffered? And they sent me a voice note. And I don't think you've heard it, right?
I have not.
So we're going to play it right now. This is one of Matt's clients that had very bad back pain, I believe. And we're going to hear what this guy said about Matt.
Uh-oh.
So I reached out to Matt at Rise Physio when I felt completely consumed by the overthoughts and fear of aggravating my back problem. So much so that I was starting to associate the gym with negative thoughts. I started avoiding most lower body exercises as I had this constant thought that I was doing more harm than good. After a few sessions with Matt, not only did I return to progressive overload training, but my symptoms have also improved, which had me build back up my self-confidence and enjoying my time at the gym.
So this is not like a promotion for people to book time with you or anything like that. The reason why I wanted to play that voice note is for the one word that I think for me can really be honestly life-changing, because when I think of life-changing, I don't think my influence on people or anything like that, what it means to me and my everyday life. And so when he said that you helped him build his self-confidence back up, I thought that was fantastic, because you've literally given this guy a piece of his life that he thought he's not going to have access to for a very, very long time. So first of all, amazing that you have the ability to do that. And second of all, I really want to understand how, especially when it comes to back pain, because I know that that's something you're very interested in, how you reassure the person what they're going through, but also find that entry point to start to build up their self-confidence and also match it with an exercise plan. And also, how does it feel hearing a voice note like that?
No,
Which is quite cool.
It's incredible. It's so rewarding. I'm not a very emotional person, I would say, but it does almost make me feel emotional to hear that you can create that change, and that you've gained enough knowledge and you've gained enough skill to be able to change someone's perception like that. Because it's really not something you're trained to do as a physiotherapist. It's really something you have to take an interest in later on.
Yes.
And it really is the basis of why I made such an effort to build Rise, because it was never, let's create a business. It's, this works so well. How can we bring it to more people? How can we educate more physios to work and act like this to help more people and create more change? So, no, it's just fantastic hearing something like that. What I do have to emphasize on here is I wouldn't just have someone walk in the room and immediately start this kind of conversation. The basis of it all is very much built in having a sound biological knowledge of the issue and the anatomy of what's going on. You do need to make sure first that that person is safe to be introduced to movement. There are cases where someone does walk in and it's not the physiotherapist's job right then to be working with them. There might be medical conditions in place which need referrals to other healthcare professionals, such as orthopedic surgeons, such as numerous other cases. But when you do have a sound understanding of what's going on, you've assessed that person, had a good conversation with them, and you know that, okay, this is what needs to be done here, we need to get this person moving, then that's the power play for a physiotherapist. That's where we can really start changing lives. I really match the two areas I understand. I match the way that a person is perceiving the issue and exercise. And I use exercise very much as a gateway to start tackling and challenging pain and problems. It's incredible how much you can regress or progress any movement. There's so many cases where people walk in with persistent issues, and all we need to do is get them to do static holds of a movement.
Okay.
And it's something called isometrics. It's basically, I like to describe it as movement without movement. And that's enough to start pushing this neuroplasticity, this change in perception of the brain of the problematic area. And I just find that incredible. I find that with 1 or 2 weeks of these isometric holds, in many cases, you can allow a gateway to get people moving better, to actually start to get them to move through range of motion, to explore these areas where they have kinesiophobia and fear of movement, and be able to flex forwards, to extend back with their back, to raise their shoulder overhead, to be able to squat down again, when previously they couldn't do it, you know. And you start to realize that it's not always the biological problem which is stopping it or creating pain. It's this huge fear built around the area.
Yeah. So then that balance between kind of like the threat and the perception, how would you approach it? And how would you advocate that somebody who's currently in pain, or maybe they're not in pain, they listen to this podcast and in a week they go running and, oh my God, my glute, my ankle, my hamstring. What would be that internal dialogue for somebody who is in pain or is perceived to be in pain?
So one of the big things is you need to have a belief in the resilience and the resilient nature of the body, that we are built to improve and to heal, and that with the correct input given, or in many cases no input given at all, we will get better. So we have to keep in mind that even with back pain, the vast majority of back pain is self-remitting. Within a few weeks you will improve. So that's one of the important beliefs and perceptions to have, the perception that the body is built to heal. And very often when we hurt ourselves, it is a little bit our fault as well. So in the back of your mind, you would know that either a big moment has happened, you've slipped and fallen to a hole and something has gotten injured. Or,
I hope not.
well, it does happen. Or you've spiked your workload. And there's another big thing, that rather than progressively increasing the amount of physical activity you do, you get excited, as we all do, and you go running for 40 kilometers in your first week of running, and then something's going to happen. The body is incredibly adaptable, but we need to give it the right time and input to adapt correctly. But if it does happen, bring down your workload, give yourself a temporary amount of rest, and I would really suggest see a physiotherapist, because one of the big things we speak about is the appropriate load at the appropriate time is going to promote healing. It's not all about this absolute rest, jump into a bed and don't move.
And when it comes to, obviously, yes, you're injured, you go see a physio, but you had also mentioned to me that sometimes we also uncover problems that might have been there but aren't actually annoying you, but now you're aware of them and you kind of start to go down this rabbit hole. And the metaphor that you used was kind of like your skin wrinkles, just as like your spine would wrinkle. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. But now that you're aware of it, you kind of can't get that looping thought out of your mind. And maybe you start to say, okay, my back's hurting me, but maybe it wasn't really hurting you as much, but now you did an MRI or whatever, and you uncovered these problems. And I know it's something that not annoys you, but you wish people to understand.
Yeah, so it's something we talk about a lot internally with the team as well, and it's a conversation I consistently have with people. So one of the big issues in medical imaging is, first of all, medical imaging saves lives, super important, but you have to be very smart and cautious when someone is referred to medical imaging. And the reason for that is exactly what you said. Our skin wrinkles and every other part of our body wrinkles as well. But these changes don't necessarily associate with pain or problems. I always quote a super interesting study where they had put a large amount of people, of adults of different ages, into an MRI machine. And they looked into, and these were all people without pain, they looked into how many of them have things on MRI which would normally be associated with pain. Degenerative disc disease, facet joint disease in the spine, these kinds of things. And what's incredible is that from 30 plus, the majority of people did have these issues you would normally associate with pain. So imagine you have a minor spinal issue, something like a muscle strain, something which is really going to be self-remitting and is going to get better. You put that person into an MRI machine and they find something which has been there anyway, which is not the causative factor of pain. There's two issues. You're going to go into this negative loop we've just talked about, where the person all of a sudden believes they have something seriously wrong with them, and early intervention might be done for no reason. So that person might decide, if they have access to it, have surgery that week, and all of a sudden they've had surgery for no reason, and you've created this whole complex affair. So that's definitely something we really need to think and talk about, and I think it's a perception which is a bit problematic. Most people who walk into a physiotherapy clinic will say, should I get an X-ray, should I get an ultrasound, should I get an MRI? And it's our job to some extent to slow them down, to tell them, listen, let's have a look at what's going on. Always with a sound biological understanding that that person is not at risk, that there are no red flags which are challenging or potentially causing harm to that person.
Okay, and so when someone does walk in to a physiotherapist and they're in pain, how can they, for themselves, slow down that like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God?
So our first thought when someone walks in and they're in this really acute and chronic pain is, I do like to refer first of all to other healthcare professionals, potentially to prescribe medication if necessary. I know there's this big thought and belief of let's never use pills, let's never use medication, but the reality is that these things were created to be used at the appropriate time and the appropriate place. So I very much believe in this multidisciplinary team approach and working from there. Physiotherapists do have an input they can use from pain management as well. So there are things like manual therapy, electrotherapy, which are things which are passive, where the physiotherapist is doing them to the patient, which can very often help with pain relief and pain control. And there's also exercise prescription, which can be used not to create change so much, but to alter pain sensitivity and the pain system. And that takes us back to what we spoke about before, things like isometric holds, gentle range of motion exercises. And I very much see that as the foundation, the basis, the beginning of the journey with most people.
Okay.
In most cases, it's very much a question of let's get this person to a baseline where pain is under control, wherever and whatever we need to use. And then we can start rebuilding, we can start moving forwards.
But I think the biggest issue with that is that, so for you, it's not always, okay, let's run and let's like start, I don't know, like maybe injections or whatever. It's more like, okay, let's understand, let's get a really good idea on paper of what led them to this moment, how they're thinking about it, slow, controlled movements. But the person sitting opposite to you kind of wants sexier answer, let's put it that way.
Totally.
And really get like the biggest bang for their buck. And so that means like maybe they want like a massage or whatever. So this is something that I think even if I'm being honest, when I go to a physio, I expect. And if I go and they don't do anything active, I think in the past, been like, I went for nothing. Like, I don't feel any different. Like, it's always a waste of time. And if I'm being honest, I don't think I've ever been consistent enough to a physio to see that lasting change. Whereas now I'm currently injured. And I've been following up. And I can now start to see the results. Like with so many things in life, it's consistency, right? But from a physio and client relationship, how do you begin to kind of really change the way people are thinking about visiting a physiotherapist?
Look, I would say that this has been my biggest ongoing challenge throughout my career, kind of matching what I know can create change long term and what that person wants and needs. But you do have to keep something in mind, and this is something I speak about a lot, even with the people working at Rise, that to some extent what that person perceives and wants is going to help them as well. So as long as you're not creating any negative effect, we do compromise to some extent. And
can you give us an example?
So a lot of people come in with the belief or perception that something like dry needling, which is a technique that might be used, or electrotherapy using machines, can help decrease their discomfort. The only point I really put through is let's use these techniques and these modalities in order to facilitate a long-term plan. And moving back, so a step before, what we can do and what we do is building this rapport and this therapeutic alliance with the client. And the definition of that is building trust. At the end of the day, it's a relationship like any other. If you walk in and the person you're speaking to seems unprofessional, doesn't really care, they're playing with their phone during the session, then you're going to lose that sense of trust, and you're not going to have a belief that this person can help you. So that comes back to this whole Rise method, where being welcoming, being loving, leaving a person in a better situation than where you find them is just so important to us, because I know it's going to affect that whole long-term result. It's not just about fluff. It's not just about the way somewhere looks. It's about the end result with that person. Can we really change their life or not? And that starts from this baseline, from this foundation of building trust.
So that's called therapeutic alliance. I had never heard of that. But I then kind of dug a bit deeper in preparing for this podcast. And you shared with me that you have this one-pager, which is called The Perfect Initial Physio Session. Looking at this, I feel like I need to create something like this just for myself, my personal life. But it's really interesting because just reading it, everything you're saying is matching up. So it's not like you're saying, okay, I want everyone to have this great experience. You're actually putting it down on paper and sharing it with your team. And so if I had to read a few of these KPIs for an ideal physio session, we have clear and welcoming room, couch roll on couch, room smells as it should smell, room is free from clutter. Now, this is really interesting because obviously humans are always tapping into their 5 senses, and you are aware that if you walk into a room and it smells great, all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is really nice. And so that's something that maybe somebody doesn't realize because it's there. But when you walk into a room that doesn't smell good, you instantly realize. So it's really interesting. And then if I had to go on to point 2 is welcome the client in the waiting room, shake their hand, build rapport from the beginning. So straight away, it's like at every, if I had to think about it as a business, at every point, touch point with your customer or your client, you're making sure that it's positive. And then we also then go on to making sure to help the client feel safe and welcome, let them know they can interrupt your questions at any time with whatever they feel is important. And obviously the list goes on until the end of the session. Let the client know when you'll see them again, why they need the next session, anything they should avoid. And I thought this was really interesting because if I'm being honest, I thought that you just wing it. But it's not something that you wing at all. And there's also a lot of intention behind it. So creating this kind of one-pager on the ideal physio session, was that something that maybe you learned from somewhere else? Or is it something that you said, okay, I have this formula and I want to make sure that we stick to it because I know it works. Obviously, it can be changed. Can you walk me through that?
Sure. So I did actually wing it in the beginning. It wasn't like this from day one. But one of the big moments for me is, again, I'll reflect on mentors. I have a mentor who's actually in the catering industry.
Okay.
And one of the things that he really pushes on and that he really finds important is the customer experience and the repeatability of that customer experience. And all of a sudden, my brain starts flickering and going kind of, how can we integrate this into healthcare as well? How can we start making an experience positive in healthcare? Does it have to be lab coats and whitewashed clinic rooms,
Because it's never really taught to you at school, right?
It's not.
Great at treating the human body and whatever, but you're also running a business.
Totally.
And you can run a profitable business that cares about the customers, which is what you're doing. So I think that's really important to mention. You don't have to, it's not a bad thing to want to create a positive customer experience.
No, totally. And it's another big challenge because our role, our ethics are to help people get better. But linking that with creating a business which helps people get better also means you can offer a better quality of care, have better services, and help more people at once. So like I said early on in this podcast, that's what it was all about. It was never about, let's build this physiotherapy business. It was about, I love what I'm doing. I'm so passionate about what I'm doing. How can we help more people? How can we create more change?
Mm-hmm. So then coming back to that one pager, talk me through it.
Okay, so
mention the diffuser, please.
I love my diffuser. It took a long time to find the smell I liked. I've stuck on citrus, especially lemon. No, but jokes apart, I think that walking into an environment which is welcoming, especially when you're in pain, when you're at your most vulnerable, is just going to be a massive plus point, and is going to continue to build and promote that therapeutic alliance and that trust in the person in front of you. So that's the reason that happened. Now, what I've started learning, if we're moving a little bit into the business world now, is reproducibility, being able to give the same level of service no matter who you're seeing, building a brand, which I really hope Rise will one day become, is so important. And that means that my thoughts, my learnings needs to be shared with everyone working in the space as well. What I hope is that, and what I do really believe, is that if you see me or if you see any other one of the physiotherapists or strength and conditioning and movement coaches that we have working with us, your experience will be the same or similar. That being said, I love that we all give our little flavor to our sessions. We all interact with people in a slightly different way. And I believe that multiple different approaches can solve problems in the same way, so you can get to that point in multiple ways with different approaches. And that was the reason that I kind of put pen to paper. I started saying, when I'm at my best energy, when I'm in my best place, what does that session look like? And how can we reproduce that in multiple locations with multiple people?
I think that's really interesting because even if I had to think about it, you are, yes, a healthcare professional, but you're also running a business and you're aware that you can learn from other businesses to make yours better and not directly, like you said, someone in the food industry, maybe someone in the gaming industry, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're just there absorbing. So as a business owner, because I know you don't refer to yourself as a business owner, but you are. You have 2 fantastic clinics. In preparation for this podcast, I visited them both just so that I can really understand what you're building, because that is something I really value in this podcast. I don't want to just have anyone on and I don't know what I'm investing my time and effort into. And I know that you have something else coming along, which we'll speak about soon. And so, so you don't refer to yourself as a business owner, but you are. In running both the Rise clinics, what do you think has been something that has been maybe the hardest thing you had to accept when it comes to running a people-focused business that is based on a lot of pain and stress and whatever? What do you think has been something that took you a while to learn? And anyone listening to this that is maybe starting a physio clinic or they're a PT or whatever, that would save them a lot of time.
So I think the very fundamental and the basis of it all is focus on the person. So I've always believed that if you give a high enough level of quality care, even if you can't 100% help that person get better, if you can't help them lose all the weight they want, if you show you're invested in that person, if they are your ultimate goal when they're in front of you, then that's going to create change. The second big value here is honesty as well. I really promote that if we don't know exactly what's going on, if we can't 100% help that person, you have that conversation with them as well. You tell them that, listen, I might not be the person to help you, but I'm going to do everything I can to get you to that person who can help you. And I think the basis of building this honest enterprise and really having being person-focused, customer service-focused, is the basis of it all. After that is the team. So people are going to disagree with this, but I always feel that you almost stumble across the right people and you get this gut-like emotional feeling about certain people who can help you take things forward. And I think that formation of team now, formation of people around you with similar values, and that's the most important thing. I feel a lot of skills in physio can be taught, but having a person that really believes, matches with that value, then that's everything.
Can you talk more about that gut feeling? What do you mean by, because I think a lot of people say it, and it's like this blanket statement. What does that even feel like if you, I don't know, explain. I'm interested.
It's a really tough one, and I'll be very honest, it's not something I can give you a huge amount of research base or science about. It's something I almost don't understand myself. But
it's okay, you can answer as a human.
There's just this feeling of connection. I almost feel it in my tummy and in my brain, that when I'm speaking to someone, I just say, I really enjoy that conversation. I can really feel that we engaged, we're on the same path, on the same vision. And that very often leads to very successful conversations. And we often ignore it. We say the brain is stronger than anything else. You know, it's just on the degree that they present or the way that they speak, the things that they've achieved. But in reality, I'm sure you feel it as well. There's something deeper than that.
Yeah.
And this happens to me when I meet mentors, and it also happens to me when I meet people who are potentially going to work with us. I think it's just massive there. And I mean, you do. I've read multiple books as well that do speak about this. I mean, we've had chats in the past about Mo Gaudat and his books Unstressable, and there's a big talk there about not ignoring this gut feeling. It's in reality a collection of all these different senses we have inside us coming into play in a different way.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. And I want to ask you, so do you go about it like finding the right people and then making the business bigger, or do you make the business bigger and then fit the people into it?
No, it's very much, I think nowadays we stumble across really good people. We're so lucky now that we have students coming from around the world. So we have an internship list that is full for the next 2 years.
Wow. From
universities around the world. So we have people coming in from the Netherlands. Nowadays we've built a collaboration with a school from Canada as well. I just find that incredible that people are traveling across continents, looking for new experiences and kind of getting our method. And the reality is that we get more from them than they get from us. They learn physio, but we learn life, we learn skills, we learn where we're lacking, and it's this constant part of improvement. But with regards to growth, it's really been like something not 100% planned. You know, things come across and I just engage with them. I want to do them. I want to take the next step, and the right people come across and we're able to grow, we're able to move forwards.
Yeah, I think being open-minded to that is really nice to hear. And even how, like you said, even with the interns, like we're learning a lot from them. I think it's not like this, okay, I'm sitting up here and looking down. It's always humbling yourself, knocking yourself down to be like, okay, how can I learn from the person who's in front of me right now? And it's really inspiring because I think it can be easy to be like, no, we figured it out, we know what's what. But I think always being like, okay, how can I continue to learn, is really fantastic. And I think because your missions and your values are so clearly outlined, leave people better than you found them. Make sure it's based on biological evidence. Always greet people and help them and whatever. So then it's easier to accept this growth mindset, if you want to call it that, because you know what you guys stand for as a team, as yourself, as Rise. And so let's build on that. But we've got something to build on. So I think I'm definitely learned from it. And even within my own, like even for this podcast, before I had you on, it had been a while since I had someone on. And then I sat down, I'm like, okay, what is my mission? And so it really comes back to that. So I love that we're mentioning this.
Yeah, it also makes it so much easier to make decisions when you have a clear vision and understanding of what you want to believe in. I'll give you the stupidest example, but sometimes I'll be walking my dog and they poop somewhere random and I'm like, no one's seeing. Should I just leave it there? Then you go, my value is to like leave the space in a better place. So it's
You're
a
like,
stupidest
"Damn it."
example, but like, damn it, I want to live true to my values, So
Yeah, yeah.
it just helps guide all these little decisions that you make subconsciously in life. And then it does put you into a place where you can say yes to more things that you find interesting. It's about putting yourself into the right situation and then making the decision if it's the right step for you or not.
Yeah, I really love that you said that. And I think it does start with the small decisions. And the easier you get at doing the small things the right way, that continues to compound in a really lovely little story. So something that you've been mentioning a lot throughout this conversation is mentorship. I think you've said it I think I counted 5 times. You've done one counting. But can you explain, as a business owner, but also just someone going through life, the value that mentorship has had in your life so far?
So from my earlier days in sports all the way through to now kind of my business journey and trying to grow a brand and the business, I've found various mentors who have just helped me along the way. And once again, as it seems to be the theme with my life, I don't actively go looking for them. But I've genuinely had situations where I say, I really respect that person's business. It would be so cool to meet him. And you end up meeting them. And just because you've already thought about how valuable that conversation would be, you engage in that conversation and you have that chat. We're so lucky nowadays that we have intelligence, we have information everywhere. You can access it from ChatGPT, you can get on your computer and read about it, but there's such huge value in having a conversation with someone who's done it. And I think that's the concept of mentorship. And one of my big goals is to my cousins and to my family to be a mentor as well. So I'd love to get to that point where people see me as someone who gives good advice. But I think it's been one of the things that have helped me grow the most, from my national team coach, who gave me the value of living a place better than it should be, to my mentor who's in the catering industry, who taught me about customer experience. So all these teams in my life have been picked up from people who have done it, who are smarter than me and have achieved it before. So
yeah, that's really interesting. And so for somebody that wants a mentor, and they can be a business owner or not, but so I think online, yes, there are a lot of mentors, but it can be a bit overwhelming. Where do you start? Who do you trust? How do you even begin to find someone that can help you in that way? Because I really think it's something that can really positively affect you. And especially if you are a small business owner or there's some part of your life that you run alone, you need to have that back and forth that's a really positive. Maybe you don't like what they're telling you, but they're telling to with your best interest at heart. So I'd love to know how you would give advice to someone who's looking for a mentor or would like to be in that position.
Look, I very much think that to some extent the proof is in the pudding. So if you're looking to achieve something specific in your life, if you see someone that has achieved it and has done it so sustainably in a way you respect, then that person could be a potential mentor to you. The other thing is, we've spoken about it before, it's a lot about the relationship. There are certain people who you can have a conversation with and you feel comfortable having a conversation with, and other people that you find it's just a struggle to engage. It doesn't mean that they are a lesser person. It just means that your character and theirs, your gut feeling and theirs, then that doesn't quite match. But I do promise you that there is someone out there who is going to have a massive positive impact on your life, and you just need to be open to have those conversations and not look at things on surface value only. It's not just about, how are your numbers looking? What's your marketing like? But dig deeper than that. Talk about what their values are, what their belief system is, why they've made the effort to build what they have. trust me, they've put a lot of work into achieving what they have. Nothing comes easy.
Yeah. And I think being open-minded, like you're saying, that it doesn't need to be someone that's directly in your industry, but you can learn something from everyone. And I think this really comes true because you said that one of your mentors told you that everything is an experience, and everything you need to do, everything that you do needs to be a real experience that you just kind of, let's go for it. What does that mean today in your life?
I mean, it's one of the things that I love in my kind of social life, that if I'm doing something, I'm not doing it just to do it. I'm enjoying that experience. I'm actively involved in that experience.
Okay.
It also very much comes through in kind of in the business and in Rise. That's what we spoke about before. That's what that template is all about, that the person has a positive experience when they leave. And if you want to build something lasting, definitely in the service industry, the experience needs to be positive. The way that the receptionist greets you when you walk through the door, the way that your physiotherapist or healthcare professional speaks to you inside the room, they all leave these little senses of, have I enjoyed that last hour, or have I left with a negative feeling, with a bad taste in my mouth? And that's the basis of experience.
So this is always front of mind. You're always thinking about either an experience you're having or an experience you're a part of or giving someone else. Is
Definitely.
that something?
And I think it links to the value of kind of leaving someone in a better place, or leaving a place in a better place. That is part of this experience as well. And it's definitely something I think about all the time at work, just the way I'm speaking to that person, the cues I'm giving, the things I'm doing. I mean, it does with enough reps almost become subconscious.
Okay.
But it's something that, especially in the early days, you really should think about and talk about.
Isn't it tiring to always be thinking like that?
My brain is quite tiring. No, I mean, I think it's just become second nature nowadays, and I'm not going to tell you that I sleep at night thinking customer experience. I'm not a robot, you know. I do live my own life and have my own life to live, but it is definitely something I think about a lot with every decision. And as long as that's the basis of your mission and your values, if I'm building a business plan, is built on that. It's not about, my business plan is not built on how are we going to maximize revenue. It's on how are we going to increase our customers' experience, how are we going to give more value to that person in front of us. And without wanting to, that leads to a growth of your customer base, because they have helped me. They've either helped me physically, or they've made the biggest effort they possibly could to get me better, but I've had a positive experience with that. And that links to everything else. It links to what your marketing looks like. It links to what your Google reviews say. And that's something I'm really proud of, that just building on that concept of human-centric and customer satisfaction has built everything else.
Fantastic. And I think coming back to what you said earlier in the podcast about neuroplasticity is that you've done it so many times, always thinking about other people, the experience, how can I help, that now it's second nature. But again, it is something you can learn. It's just something that you teach also at Rise. So that's really, really cool. So coming back to Rise, so you currently have 2 clinics, but there's something on the horizon.
Yes, extremely exciting.
Please explain.
Fantastic. So the concept, the plan was always to start moving, not away from, but linking our beliefs in the medical industry into the fitness world as well. And some of the deepest values we have are being research-based, being data-driven, but also being customer-centric and looking after people. So our current project is now in collaboration with a massive new gym facility or performance science facility, where we'll be offering the same kind of offerings we offer in physio into the fitness world. So just a little bit more detail about it. We're going to be offering a very vast and interesting testing department. The way I like to explain it in just a couple of words is, imagine you went to your GP and you want to get a workup on how your body is working.
Okay.
But the same thing for your fitness. So body analysis, looking at muscle mass and fat percentage, cardiovascular testing. Where we
Is
look
this
at,
just for athletes?
no, so athletes will always be kind of the top of the triangle, but I believe that everything you get from that point you should distribute down to everyone. My goal is to bring this to people who are interested in sport, want to improve in their sport, and want to stop using this shotgun approach to training. So you're really strong, but your cardiovascular health is struggling. Let's work on your cardiovascular health. Let's push your training for the next 4 months on improving your aerobic and anaerobic capacity. Or we've tested someone else and we notice, wow, you're really good at your running, your cycling, all of that, but you're struggling with your strength. It could lead to injury. So let's focus on that for your training at the next point. And that's what the testing department will be all about, trying to give data which is understandable. Even in my background as an athlete, having a good understanding of sports and exercise medicine as well, I could never analyze the reports that were given to me about my own body. So we're really looking at software and looking at methods to help people understand what that test means. And one of the big things we'll do there, again, thinking about customer experience, is that with every test, you have an hour sitting down with one of our professionals who's going to explain exactly what's going on. And at least in my data-driven brain, I think there's huge value in that, rather than just training for the sake of training for the right improvement to actually feel change. Wherever you are in your lifespan, if you're an 18-year-old about to break into professional sport, or a 60-year-old who wants to take on a triathlon, then let's make sure that your training, your time is used valuably, rather than just whatever method it goes into.
And what if you're someone who doesn't fall in that bracket of wanting to compete? Maybe they don't enjoy training, but they know how important it is and how it's not a pill that you can take. It's something you have to work on every day. Do they fall anywhere in there? Or is it only for someone that's got these goals, like running a marathon, doing a triathlon, whatever that is?
No, definitely not. I mean, it's accessible for anyone who enjoys data. What we have seen now, especially in the increase in fitness wearables, is everyone likes this data about how many steps they're walking, how many calories they're burning in the day. So the data you obtain is really, I believe, what can guide you into your training. Do you have to get tested to train with us? Definitely not. But I think building this baseline, knowing where you stand, where you start, is something we've found from the physiotherapy world gives a lot of value. Knowing what the strength of your quads and hamstring muscles look like before your rehab process. And I think that same valuable data can really be brought into training. But that being said, we do, apart from the testing department, have a training space.
Okay.
And this training space will be quite special for multiple reasons. First of all, it looks super cool. I can't wait to share it with everyone. But the second thing is the type of classes that we'll be offering in the space. Through my years and through research, and obviously a lot of that's coming out nowadays in the sports and exercise science world, is that there's basis of our health. Even the World Health Organization talks about the basis of where you should be looking at to improve your fitness. And we've divided that into 3 specific areas, and we'll be running 3 classes on those 3 areas. The first one is called Strong, and it's really my baby and something I really hope can grow and develop, which is where we'll bring the personal training kind of model, the place where you're with your trainer, gradually getting stronger over an 8-week block, into a community-based and group training scenario. So we'll have a maximum of 12 people training together, all helping each other out, coached, massive emphasis on correct form and on longevity. And that's one of the big words. I want people to be able to train in a method and in a way which will not get them injured, which will not make them end up in my physiotherapy clinics upstairs, funnily enough. So that will be one of the main classes there. I'm actually really looking forward to coaching quite a few of those classes myself, because it's something I really feel will give value to our members and to people working and training in that space. The other class will be cardiovascular fitness based. We know obviously the importance of the heart and lungs, both for the body but also for the brain. One huge piece of research that came out just a couple of months ago is the massive effect of being cardiovascularly healthy on the reduction in Alzheimer's disease, on the reduction of dementia disease as well. So I think we're all now in a place where we really see that the value of life and the importance of life and of having a high quality life is more important almost than the amount of years you live. We all talk about, I want to have the best quality of life possible through my lifespan. And that's what health span is all about. It's not about how long am I alive, it's about how healthy am I through the years that I'm alive. So that's the second reason that we want to work on that cardiovascular space. The third class is a bit of a blend of both, where we'll be using strength training and cardiovascular fitness to promote strength and promote cardiovascular gains at once, again in a safer environment. Again, I'm a big believer in all forms of exercise, especially forms of exercise that promote community, promote strength, promote mental and physical well-being and health. But the point of these hybrid classes, and that's actually the name of our third class, will be more based on allowing people to train wherever they are in their fitness journey without getting hurt, promoting longevity and getting people training regularly without issues.
Fantastic. There are a lot of gyms that are very good, and I definitely feel like everyone is a lot more exercise and health concerned in the right ways. And so this is coming in at the perfect time. Definitely something I'll be trying out. And I'm really excited. So when does this open?
So we're aiming to open in the middle of November.
Okay.
So fingers crossed that we'll hit those dates. Obviously, the logistical side has been not a nightmare, but an interesting challenge. And we're moving forwards with that. So it looks really likely that before the end of this year, it will be a reality.
Okay. How does that feel?
It's almost overwhelming, but again, just because I know what the mission and the vision is, then it's not something that scares me. It's just, again, how can we improve the customer experience to a point that everyone wants to be a member in this space and everyone wants to be training and feeling good and healthy in this space as well.
Love it. So where can people find out more?
So they can find more on our Instagram and website, Rise Fitness and Performance. And don't worry, we'll be bombarding social media with as much stuff as possible.
Love it. So I feel like we've had such a good conversation, spoken about the brain, the body, business, like all of my favorite things. As a kind of closing exercise I love to do on this podcast is I have the final questions, which I haven't told you about. So you're completely keeping you on your toes. So I just have 3 closing questions. Okay. So the first one is, why do you love fishing so much?
We had to bring fishing into it. I thought it was going to say a fishing-free zone. No, it's just the best experience I ever have. It's given me an opportunity to travel to some wild countries and experience the world in a different way. And it's my form of meditation. I wish I was as mindful as Neil Juice, and I could just sit down in my living room and meditate at any moment. But with me, I just find it a little bit more challenging, and I feel being out at sea that and almost having that adventure every time you go and not knowing what you're going to find, just it gives my brain that relaxation it needs.
And probably the busier you get, and always having a business, it's always something you can do. It's probably something that it's a good thing that you've got that hobby that gives you that
Totally. And I love that my phone doesn't work as soon as you're 15 miles out of Malta, so that helps as well.
Fantastic. So the second question is, what does your dream day look like?
So, dream day, I think morning basis a lot around coffee, just makes your mind go. I've always loved being in the clinic with people, so having a bit of a mix of investigation with some new clients and trying to create a new plan for them and referring them on to the correct professional who's going to help them in the team is great as well. And just over the last few years, I've realized how important and valuable conversations are with people that you value. So I think that would be the latter part of the day. So having a couple of good chats with people and eating some nice food.
Okay, so that's your work day. And then when you're in the weekend, it would be some kind of training probably, and then being on the boat, fishing.
Yeah, so I would say even in the weekdays, like I haven't spoken much about my own personal training, but I really value that and find it really important. I try to have kind of the right type of training in throughout the week, so that's done throughout and weekends as well. And yeah, if I can get some fishing in the weekend, it's even better.
Fantastic. And the last question is, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So I think best piece of advice I ever got is to always have a basis of everything you do. And this comes back to this question of mission and vision. So know what you're trying to achieve, and very famous book as well, always start with why. So why am I doing this? Why do I want to do it? And although it doesn't need to be a fully structured plan, know what the rough idea of where you want to get to is and why you want to get there.
Amazing. Matt, I really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like I learned so much, and I'm going to continue to learn so much. I know that you are now putting out more content on your Instagram, which is Physio with Matt.
Yep.
And also people can follow your pages, all of the pages, all the Rise pages, which we'll link in the show notes. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up, but it's been a pleasure.
No, just thank you so much for the opportunity. I love that I didn't know what direction this conversation was going to go into, but it went into all the directions I wanted to and hoped it would. So thank you so much.
Perfect.